Hey guys, welcome back to another tutorial from ADSR and SylenthTutorials.com. I am Echo Summers and I'll be showing you how to make that deep house bass in Sylenth today. I do want to point out that I have an instance of the Sausage Fattener acting as a compressor slash limiter on the channel that the Sylenth bass preset's playing. And I also have this EQ, which is just bumping a little bit of the highs and a little bit of the mids and rolling off a pinch of the lows so it kind of fit with that kick a little bit better. I'm now going to just make a new instance of Sylenth, and we'll just jump right into this. Okay, so first thing, I just do want to point out that this is we're going to be using both part A and part B for this sound. So it sounds like a super simple sound to make, but it's actually a good amount of layering and a lot of effects going on too. So I'm going to go quickly in this tutorial. For oscillator A1, well, first let's turn the polyphony down to 1 and make sure that you have sync selected. And for the octave in oscillator A1, I'm going to down tune this an octave so everything's lower. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a sine wave instead of the saw wave. You're not going to hear a lot right now, but it helps to boost the voices, so you'll hear a little bit more of the sine. Make sure you keep retrigger selected, so it's retriggering the phase of every time a note is played or triggered. And now for the phase, speaking of phase, I'm going to turn the phase up a little bit to about 106 degrees or around there. Helps clean up the sound a pinch. And I'm going to add a little bit of detune just to spread things out. About 1.33. You can even nix the detune if you don't like that sound. And then for the stereo, keep where it is, and the pan, keep where it is. And now for the amp envelope for part A, I'm going to turn the decay up to 4.94, so just a shade under 5. All right, and then the sustain, I'm going to turn it down a little bit because we're playing short passages usually in deep house. So I'm going to turn that down to about 5.75. And then I'm going to turn this release up to about 1.5 or 1.54, I think the number would be. Okay, so moving on to oscillator A2, I'm going to pitch this down as well. And I am going to select another instance of a sine wave. And for this, I'm going to do 3 voices. And then I'm going to not re-trigger this one. And now for the volume, you'll keep that up at 10, but I'm going to turn up the phase a little bit on this. I'm going to turn it up to about 120 degrees, so a little bit higher than we did on the first one. And keep the detune down on all this because we're not re-triggering it, so it'd already be less of a consistent tone. So that's oscillator A1 and A2. Let's jump over to part B and get those oscillators activated. So I'm going to actually use a noise generator for a noise waveform for oscillator B1, and I'm going to turn the volume down a good amount. I'm going to turn the volume down to about 3.7 or anywhere in there should go. It just matters, depends on how much of the noise you want in the sound. And now I'm going to turn the voices up to just about 2 or 3 and keep retriggered selected. Alright, and it's going to be a lot of noise because we don't have our filters set up right now. So I'm going to turn it down until we actually get the filter set up. I'm going to boost a little bit of the detune. To my ear, it helps soften up the noise a little. I could be completely wrong on that. And now for the amp envelope for part B, I'm going to keep the attack, the decay where they are. I'm just going to turn the sustain down. I'm going to turn the sustain down to about 8.1 or 8.10, and I'm just going to bump the release a hair to about 2.11. Okay, so now for oscillator B2, I'm going to pitch this down just 1 octave, and I'm going to select the only wave that isn't, besides the noise, that isn't a sine. I'm going to select the pulse waveform. And the volume for that, I'm going to kind of want to blend it with the other one. So it's going to be a little bit loud right now because I'm going to boost it up to 5 voices. So it kind of lost its whole deep house appeal. So I'm going to turn the volume down to about 6.71. I'm going to give it a little bit of phase, maybe do about 40 degrees or around there. And I'm also going to bump this detune up a little to spread things out, just to about 2.24. All right, so if I solo part B and solo part A. So once I get the filter set up and the amp envelope, I mean the modulation envelope set up, it'll bring back more of that kind of deep house feel. So let's go to part A real quick. And in part A, I'm going to select for the filter input, select both A and B. So it's going to be affecting part A and B. And now for the filter type, I'm going to do the low pass 4. Just arrow up once, or click your mouse and move that line up once to get to the low pass 4. And I'm going to turn the cutoff down to about 49 hertz around there. And I'm going to give it a little bit of resonance, kind of helps make it pop through the kick a little more. So just to about maybe 2.81, somewhere around there. And then I'm also going to give it just a touch of drive to warm things up a little. So now let's go over to part B and get the filter set up for part B. In part B, I'm going to, for my input select, just keep it on B. We don't want this one affecting part A as well. So I'm going to select low pass filter again. I'm going to turn this cutoff down a good amount to about 19 hertz, just a shade under 20. And now I'm going to boost the resonance as well to about 1.9 or 2. And that squares away the filters A and B. So now I'm going to go down to this master filter control. And this is going to kill a little bit of the sound, but we'll bring it back with our modulation envelopes. I'm going to turn this cutoff, the big cutoff knob, to 3.13. If it would let me get there, and it's not, so I'm just going to stop at 3.62. And then I'm going to turn the resonance up just a little on that as well. Maybe just a little bit under 1. So a lot of the sound is gone right now, but definitely has that sub that is kind of synonymous with deep house. So now let's go to our first modulation envelope, and I'm going to select cutoff B. And for that, I'm going to turn the knob, the little rotary knob under to the left of it, to about 8.57. And then to hear that effect on the sound, I'm just going to bump the decay a little bit. I'm going to turn the decay up to 2.24. So it brings in a little bit of that pluckiness that we need. And I'm also going to boost a little bit of the release, just a hair, maybe a little bit under 1. Okay, so now I'm going to go to my second modulation envelope, and I'm going to select pitch A and B, and I'm using this little trick that I've showed you in my tutorials before, where it's just I'm going to boost the decay a little, and just kind of ever so slightly push this knob up to maybe about 1.3 or 1.2. We'll see once we actually get the sound kind of dialed in. So if you do too much, it makes kind of like a laser tom-tom sound. But if you get the right amount, it adds a little bit of attack to the beginning parts of your notes. All right, and then I'm also going to go to this miscellaneous knob here, and for the source, I'm going to select step velocity. It's a really cool thing, and I'm going to select cutoff A and B, and I'm going to turn the source knob up for it, this little knob right here, to 3.71. So that was what was kind of making it have that arpeggiation feel, or that gate or sequence. I didn't actually have the arpeggiator going. I just had this step velocity going. And now I'm going to select phase A. So I'll be controlling both this cutoff A and B and phase A. And for this, I'm just going to bump the little rotary knob right here up to about 2. All right, now on to the effects section. First thing I'm going to do is add a little bit of distortion to kind of drive the sound and give it a little bit more presence. I'm going to select the clip type, and for the amount, I am going to do 3.43. So turn it down from 5 a little bit. And now the dry wet, I'm going to select 38% or around there. then I'm going to add some chorus to this sound. And for the delay left, or sorry, just the delay, I'm going to do 6.20 milliseconds. So by default, it's around 8. So just turn it down a little. I'm going to turn the rate up to 0.94, 91, 94 hertz, around there. I'm going to turn the depth down a little. It starts around 34, but I'm going to do around 20 to 21%. Feedback, I'm going to keep where it is. Width, I'm going to keep where it is. I am just going to turn down this dry wet a little to taste. All right, and now I'm going to activate the EQ to help clean up the sound. And for the bass, I'm going to turn it up a hair. I'm going to turn it up to about 9.86 or 9.93 would work. The bass frequency, I'm going to turn up to 476, so a good ways. Now I'm going to boost a little bit of treble, because if you're thinking if you're going to use this type of sound in a drop, it needs to have both the lower frequencies and some of the high frequencies represented. I'm going to turn that up to about 9.93, and then the treble frequency, I'm going to boost up to around 6,000. And then keep it on one pole. So now let's add some delay, which will play nicely off of the step velocity that we have tied to our cutoff A and B in phase. So with the delay left time, I'm going to do 1/8 dotted. Actually, I'm sorry, I'm going to do 1/4 note, sorry. And then for the delay right time, I'm going to do an 1/8 note. And then we're going to keep it on ping pong, and we're going to do a good amount of low cut here, so it cuts out some of the lows of the delays, because we have a low kind of frequency sound anyway. So around 300 would do. All right, and then the smear, I'm going to turn up the smear a little bit. And the spread, I'm actually going to crank this spread up to get everything as far away from the middle of the sound source as I can. And the width, I'm going to boost the width up as well. I'm going to turn the dry wet down to taste. So it'd be really cool if Sylenth could let you like solo just the wet signal of your effects, but you can hopefully you can hear through YouTube that the delays are mainly happening in the left and right of the speakers, which helps spread things out for a mix. And now I'm going to add a little bit of reverb. If I was actually pulling the sound into a production of Deep House, I'd probably use a third party, but for this tutorial, I'll just do this. So pre-delay, keep where it's at. Turn the damp up to about 3.43 or around there. And then turn the wet down. By default, it's at about 50%. I'm going to turn it down to about 20. Or 23. And then finally, like I said, a lot of effects. I'm going to be using the compression. And for the ratio, I'm going to keep it on this 3:88:1. And for the threshold, I'm going to keep it at 15. The attack, I'm just going to turn down a little bit. So the attack starts at 15. I'm going to start at about 5 to 7 milliseconds. And then this release, I'm just going to keep where it is. And then you can, of course, play with your cutoffs. And then finally, the last thing to do is adjust the mix a little so we have a little bit more of the sine feel going. I'm going to turn this mix A up to 5.98. And that is pretty much the sound, guys. You can really change the feeling of it with the cutoff knob down here and this cutoff AB with the step velocity. So you can really make it kind of your own sound. And I thought it was cool, and I wanted to share it with you just because Sylenth's really known for its EDM in the progressive world, the trance, dubstep, things like that, and even electro. So you can still make some really cool deep house, garage type bass sounds on it. If you guys have any questions or comments, let me know below, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And if you haven't checked out sylenthtutorials.com, head on over there. Tons of cool things, Sylenth. And thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.